Big red button, yeah, look at that.
Dumb.
Money.
So, hi, my name's Josh. I write poetry. Questions? Yes.
Do you have any inspirations in terms of poets?
Okay. Let's start by defining poetry. If we're differentiating poetry from other types of writing, what are the attributes that make a poem?
Like you don't have to follow the margins you do of like a prose piece.
Okay, if you are listening to somebody speaking, how do you differentiate between poetry and prose?
That's a good question.
Like the cadence someone has when they're speaking.
What is the cadence of poetry?
And there's a lot of pauses usually, or lots of inflection, like more than you would get when someone's just reading their piece of paper.
It really, really bothers me when somebody is doing a spoken word and they start doing tonal masturbation. So that's a complaint. I clearly have opinions. What is poetry? What is poetry?
Well, I would argue that poetry is the conveyance of meaning and emotions through a specific format.
And that specific format is?
It can take format in many different forms. That's the whole appeal of it.
What is the thing that seems least like poetry that you consider poetry?
I'd have to go freeform for that. Because it's most like prose in that case.
Have you ever read the New Yorker restaurant reviews? I consider those poetry. Those are really excellent. They have a format. They always have this is the feeling of the location, all the senses and sights of this room. Now let me bring you into this plate of food that's brought before me and all the sensations that happen in my mouth, and then stepping back out and saying, like, this is the overall experience that I had at this restaurant. They're beautiful. They're better than the poetry that the New Yorker publishes, in my opinion. So, we're getting closer. What is poetry? Conveyance of meaning. Yes.
I would say it's just anything that is written with the intent to be poetry in a poetry-like way, because I don't think you can really define what it is.
Okay, that sounds like pornography. What is poetry-like way?
Flowery vocabulary.
Flowery vocabulary. How is a haiku a poem?
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So, would you say that haikus use flowery vocabulary?
I'm not really too familiar with haikus.
Okay. Can you have something that is sparse and simple and still poetic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then what is poetic communication?
I mean, I almost feel like it's impossible to define like what it really is. Trying to
Yeah,
define.
so you're in her camp.
Yeah,
You're like,
like-
this is like pornography. I know it when I see it. It's a poetic way. I can just, it's very poetic.
You can't like define what art is. If you say it's poetry, then to some extent like it is poetry.
Sure. You can say that, like, this seems like poetry to me.
Yeah, because it's all like subjective.
Right? So now we're defining poetry as the type of relationship that you're having with words. So okay, if we're putting things on a scale, people tend to put like poetry as sort of the pinnacle of language in use, right? That transcends just an article. That's poetry. So what moves language from a Donald Trump tweet to poetry? Or is a Donald Trump tweet poetry? Sad. Your eyes are moving like you have thoughts brewing.
I'm just thinking about like what you're saying, trying to come up with something.
Keep doing it.
Okay.
No pressure.
Like if it resonates with you.
Can you give me an example of something that has resonated with you recently?
Okay, well, like, the other day was senior ditch day, and we tried to go to Knott's Berry Farm, but we tried to use my friend's pass instead of, because we didn't have any. And then, like, the lady kicked us out, and my mom was like, well, that's what you get for lying. So I felt like my mom telling me, like, I got kicked out because I was, like, trying to cheat the system, like, resonated with me.
So like a sort of spotlight on experience.
Yeah, like something you'll remember later.
Okay. Memorable, impactful, meaning-filled language is poetry. What was the original question?
What's your poet inspiration?
Yeah. So now that I think we've defined poetry as pretty much anything in the world, I feel safe telling you who my poetic inspirations are. As I said, the New Yorker restaurant reviews I consider a poetic inspiration. I'm lucky enough to have some friends who I think are really good writers, and so they are inspirations to me. Did any of y'all watch the Colbert Report? That show was poetry. Nowadays, I think John Oliver, Last Week Tonight, is poetry. Those shows are so well written. I just finished watching a show called Bonding on Netflix about a guy who's helping with this BDSM dungeon as an assistant. And it had enough moments of quippy, playful, like deep, incisive comments about people's characters and how they play out that I would consider that show at least skirting on poetry. Looking back, the best poems that I have are me trying to tell the stories that other people have told me. So I wrote this poem about Tank the Tortoise. Did anybody read Insane and Beautiful? That one is about a tortoise who got brought home and then spent the first couple weeks humping his water bowl. And then, because he just wanted a partner, that's all he wanted. So he formed a romantic attachment to his water bowl and then kept on trying to escape, and so they had to build an enclosure so that he couldn't see the hillsides around him, because as long as he could see outside, he was always trying to get out. So they had to block it off so that he couldn't see it anymore. And then he got content with his small little world once he lost sight of the bigger picture. I think that's really, really a powerful story, and so I had to capture that, and that's one of my favorite poems that I've written. Yeah.
So you said that like the delivery or slam poetry that kind of annoys you and all that, but what do you say besides that, what's your biggest pet peeve with like that you see other people do with poetry that just pisses you off?
Pisses me off. I try to steer away from the pisses me off emotions because they are self-perpetuating, and then you turn into a 60-year-old man who's just angry at everything. I saw a man yelling at his... I had this moment, I think maybe last year. I was walking through my neighborhood and I saw a guy in a cul-de-sac look at a chihuahua and just was like shouting at this chihuahua, just like, "You son of a bitch!" I'm just like going off, and I'm like, this thing is so small and helpless. There's nothing that animal could have possibly done to like deserve that rage. And then I had this click in my head of like, nothing deserves that rage. The anger is always about what's going on inside of us. Yeah.
Sorry. How long did it take for you to enjoy like writing poetry and like the work that you're writing?
Oh, I loved writing that poem in 5th grade. That's why I kept doing it all through middle school and high school and college, and tried to get an MFA in poetry, and like because I loved it. It was great from the beginning. My first book of poetry that I put together, I would say like I really like a third of those poems. But back in the day, that was the top 10% of my poems, and I thought I loved every single one of them. Now I like a third of them. But that's just, I think, the nature of growing. The things that resonated with me back then don't resonate anymore. But I also have to accept that people who are younger than me and read those things, it resonates with them because they're going through similar things. Yeah.
So on your poems on your website, you started including pictures and doing the different shapes. How did that like come to you?
There are poems where I like them, and somehow like turning them into the right shape elevates them. So, for example, there was a poem. It starts off that murder and suicide often come together.
I don't remember the name.
But you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So the original shape for it was some like weird thing, and it didn't work. And then I went back, I had like an inspiration one day and just turned it into this like double lattice sweeping thing, and all of a sudden it's a good poem. Like, so it wasn't the words that were keeping it from being, it was the shape that was not representing the subject matter. And once I got that, then I was happy. So I'm now happy with that poem.
Remember that one, Impale?
Yes.
That was really cool.
That is a good one. Yeah.
Do you make the collages as you're like simultaneous, or is like after you finish the poem?
I try and get the words right and then delete all the enjambments. You just turn it into a big paragraph, and then line by line and just start spacing things out and shaping it into the thing I want it to be.
How important are lines to you in poetry?
Lines?
Yeah, how you divide it,
Scale of 1 to 10? I don't know. If you take that idea of like lines are breath, having these sort of weird shapes to poems, is to try and represent the type of word flow that I want. Making is like, oh, you're gonna have to search for the next word at this point. You can do things like that. So I think spaces are more important than lines. right? It's about space. Yeah.
Is there like a favorite subject that you like writing poetry about? A topic?
I really like writing about other people's stories. The imaginative, empathetic work of dropping into somebody else's experience. So for example, I read an article about a young girl who was babysitting and decided to joy kill the girl that she was babysitting. Like just slit her throat. And it doesn't even compute with my mind, like how that would be something that you would get excited about or do or find joy in. But she's a human. Like, we're both humans, me and that girl. And so I decided to like drop in and say, let's get as close to understanding this as possible. Yeah.
Like how, when you're like going to drop into like someone else's perspective or like way of thinking, like how do you like prepare, like how do you like, because you said for like the last one, like that you were researching like sociopaths and the way they think, but like how do you do that for like a tortoise? Like how do you like sit there and like come up with the way that you would think a tortoise would like view, or was it not?
Yeah.
Like, was it from a tortoise's perspective, the poem?
I would say it's really about, like, the golden rule, this kind of thing, that you look for common ground. So, I don't know what it feels like to have a shell on my back, or to have, like, joints that set me up so I walk like this. But, I do know what it's like to be really horny. And I do know what it's like to be thirsty or hungry. And I do enjoy the sun on my back and like the warmth of. So if you start just thinking like, what are the things that I share with the tortoise? And then you build from there, like areas of commonality. What is the shortest line between our experiences? That's how you get sort of an approximation. There are some ways that I'm just never going to understand your experience, right? I think if the Me Too movement has taught us anything as men, it's this idea of like, you will never understand what it's like to be a woman. And at the same time, it's like, yes, that's true, but I'm really trying. Not as like a condescending male, like, I understand what you're going through, but can't you just suck it up? My attitude is like, I love you as a fellow human being, and I want, from my perspective, to empathize with the shit you're going through and try and make your life better. That's what I'm trying to do, right?
So do you write poetry to make people feel better?
I write things because I'm a highly sensitive person. And how many people have had that, where you hear a song and it just speaks straight to your heart? You're like, that feeling in here, you and me, Stevie Wonder, you and me, Fiona Apple, that kind of thing. So like, if I can be a part of that, like if I can find the right words that sort of just like resonate with somebody and make them feel less alone, or help them to look at something in a different way than they usually do. Like if I change forever the way that a person looks at a tortoise in a cage, cool. Right? If I can expand you out a little bit with those words. And maybe do the same for myself in the process. So those are the reasons I write.
But what about the poems that you haven't published yet?
Is it art if no one else has seen it?
Yeah.
I'm not satisfied with the poems that I'm hiding. I would like more people to read them. No one really reads my blog. I need to find a way to expand my audience base. Try to ask me a question that embarrasses me. Try to ask me a question that makes me go, ooh, never thought of that. Throw me off balance. Be the person I remember. Even if it's only like, oh, that asshole high school student. Who did they are?
Well, being a poet isn't a very popular career choice.
No, that's why I'm not a professional poet. However, I do try to work poetry into all of the work that I do. I wrote an 80-page summary of the Crossroads program that I'm working for, and built into it this parallel structure of like 3 within 3, and when I gave that to the program directors, they're like, this is way too long to ever go in an article, but dude, the structure, wow, brilliant. Called it brilliant. And I was like, that's because I've been practicing writing poetry since I was in the 5th grade. Right? Like that's the clause I've got. So I use these techniques in my profession, but it's not my profession. It's my passion.
Do you ever tell someone you write poetry and they're just like, what?
This is a great question. I hide it a lot. Like on my multiple dating profiles, none of them mention poetry. Oh, poetry? So yeah. That just talks about acro and has pictures of me at the beach.
Wait, what's an acro?
Acro yoga? Yeah. Anybody want to go up in the air now? I'll show you.
Sure.
What?
Yeah?
I'll try.
Okay, I'm gonna show you guys what acro yoga is. I want you to just trust fall, just lean in, and good. Okay. Oh! Feel that I got you?
Yeah.
So take your hands and reach them back towards your feet and arch your chest up and look forward. Nice. So this is okay, you ready to go up a notch?
Yeah.
So grab my ankles, and I want you to keep this body position and tip down so your shoulders are on my hands and your feet are straight up in the air.
No way.
Push my legs away from you. And keep your legs up straight. Keep your legs up straight. There we go.
This is so cool.
So that's called candlestick, and that's the beginning. We won't go into a full-on acro thing. But if any of y'all want to hit me up, I'm here till 11:20. So just macro in the parking lot. Other questions? Get deep, people. Get weird.
Do you go to work without your shoes on?
Yeah, I taught barefoot a lot, and I still do. I go to meetings with shoes on. I bought some nice dress shoes for meetings with the chancellor. And my Vibram 5 fingers. The gym doesn't let me work out barefoot, so I go in 5 fingers.
Do you ever think no one wants to hear your opinion or like?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people who don't want to read poetry, period. I wait for moments where, again, I feel like it's something that's worth sharing with other people. And when I find that, then I take the time to craft the language so that it's as clear, cogent, and impactful as possible. But I don't need to do it, and if there's ever a day where there's nothing to write, or a year, or 2 years, okay. Like, communication is for a purpose.
How much has the way that you've thought about, like, people changed as you continued writing poetry and, like, reading it?
Oh, that's like really a human question more than a writer question. The more that I interact with people, the more that I get below the surface where everybody looks really different. What are you driven by? What makes you happy? What makes you feel fulfilled? What are you looking for? What are you seeking? What do you want to do in this world? What brings you peace? Those things are really similar in everyone. For myself, I defined it as creation and connection. I like the idea that I'm of like putting something out and being productive, and I like the idea of feeling in common with others, not feeling alone. Is there anybody who doesn't feel that? Is there anybody in here who's like creating things brings you no joy? Whether it's like baking a cake or doing social work and just helping people in their lives. And once you make that cake, do you just sit there eating it by yourself? Is that what makes you happy? Or is it you bake a cake so that you can invite people over and say, please eat my food so I will not be obese? Right? Why do you bake? Why do you make? We create and we connect. And that's everybody. So the way that I've changed in thinking about like below the apparent surfaces of things is how deeply similar we are. And the beautiful thing about that is how intrinsically connected we all are from the beginning. And that gives me a confidence when I walk into rooms that I didn't have when I was a high school student. Right? When I was a high school student, I was all about who am I, what is my identity, how can I prove to the world that I'm a unique individual, a special flower with great potential. And at this point in my life, like I think my biggest joy just comes in walking into a room and saying, you and me both. You and me both. And that's like that's every dude who I see in a bar who's like lonely. I'm like, I've been there with you in that loneliness. I'm trying not to be there tonight. You want to talk? Let's talk. No? You think I'm a weirdo for coming up and talking to you and you're not gay, bro? Okay. I'll go talk to somebody else. But I really hope you get over that. And every woman that I used to be afraid to talk to is now just like, you and me both. We're both sensitive, effusive creatures that just want to be loved and cared for. And let's talk about that. You know? So whatever. So that's how I've changed thinking about people. Yeah.
Do you ever feel like poetry is kind of like contrived? Like poetry, or in general, it's just trying to convey a central idea or set of beliefs. So like, why can't you just like say it straight up? Or why do you have to put it into sometimes confusing words?
I think if a poem is confusing, then my personal aesthetic of poetry is that it shouldn't be that. There are people like Ezra Pound, who I'm not going to shit on. He's an amazing poet, also a fascist. But his poetry was just like how many like odd references to in different languages can I do so that only like the super bright people understand this? I think that's a dickish way to write poetry. I think that, in my personal opinion, I am trying to write to be understood. I am trying to write in ways that confound literal expression, but only because our hearts work like that, right? All of our thoughts are sitting on top of this giant elephant of emotions. And like any opinion that you have, whether you like it or not, you're not data, right? You're not the Borg. You don't operate on pure logic. You operate on feelings. You operate on like personal drives and emotions and desires and motives. And emotions think in metaphors. Emotions think in colors and images. And so that's why poetry. Why poetry? Because that's the human experience. Yeah.
What's your craziest experience with Mr. Zioli?
I wasn't there when you busted your teeth out.
No.
I don't know.
My teeth knocked out with a sword and.
Yeah.
Did anyone ever like put you down or like tell you that your poetry like wasn't good? And how'd you like?
Oh yeah, like my roommate and really good friend Jonathan. Straight up told me, he's like, I'm not going to read any, oh, and he's German, by the way, so he's like, I'm not going to read any of your poems that are over 12 lines, just so you know. Don't even try. Too long. My current, sometimes partner, we have both acknowledged that we're completely incompatible, but part of that is that she hates poetry. Hates it. So I'll use, like, poetic language, I'll use a metaphor, and she's like, what are you talking about? And like everybody else is like, it's such a beautiful way to put it. She's just like, impractical, illogical, inaccurate. Rephrase. So, yes, there are people who don't like my poetry, and I love them anyway.
Has there ever been a time that you like wanted to stop poetry for some reason?
Wanted to stop. No, times that I have stopped. But again, I think that poetry is just effusive. It comes out. So like I wouldn't do it if I weren't compelled to do it, and if I do feel not compelled to write, I'm not a professional. No one's like, hey Josh, when's your next book of poetry coming out? No one even reads my blog. I'm under no pressure. Once a year, there's a huge flood of traffic.
Would you say you're like an emotional person?
No, I'm very stoic. Yes, I am ridiculously emotional. Also, like touchy-feely. I wouldn't say that I'm emotionally needy, but I do. Like I'm really a puppy dog spirit in a human body. I yearn for connection and eye contact and a lot of things that you just don't get in American society. But I have found communities. I found acro yoga, which is a place where people just love being monkeys, and we climb all over each other, and we balance each other on our feet, and we collapse in laughing puddles. I found the ecstatic dance community, which is where people just go into a room and just flow around each other for 2 hours every Sunday. And so I do that. There's contact improv, which is just ecstatic dance without the music. Does anybody want to try this right now? I will show you contact improv. Anybody like to touch people?
I mean, who doesn't?
Sure. Okay.
Oh.
What?
Y'all do this for 2 hours? It's like a long time. It's like 2 straight hours of.
Well, that's the dance. That's
That's the other one. Oh, okay. I was like, quiet dancing just seems.
No, just connecting with people. You know, it's nice. I forget what I was even answering at that point.
Are you emotional?
Yeah, clearly, yes.
So since you feel like so many emotions, and you were saying that like all your experiences, like you feel them very deeply and intensely, does that ever affect like when you're just sitting in a room and it's quiet and like you want to express yourself and feel emotional with everyone else? Like do you ever feel like inhibited by like other people's auras or like emotions?
Like held back from expressing myself?
Yeah.
For a long time I did, but at this point I've had enough accepting communities in my life to break through that. And I hope that if any of you feel that sort of withheld aspect in your life, trust me, just find communities where you feel safe enough to open up and be your weird self. I used to think I was too weird for anybody to like me. Now I look for the people I think are weird because they're the ones I most like being around. The older you get, the more you realize that normal is A, fake, and B, completely unattractive. If you're weird, that's your most attractive characteristic. If you get some weird thing that you're like, I can't tell anybody this is so embarrassing, that's the coolest thing about you. I promise you. Okay?
Unfortunately, that's it for time. Remember, Monday we got to be really ready to hit the ground running with a presentation, so we